in the energy and construction space. So trying to make sure that we have well-trained and educated workforce in order to help deliver energy efficient buildings.
Just for an FYI, we are recording, mainly because I can't remember to write everything down, and it's good that I can go back and do it. Gregory, you want to go next?
Of course, yeah. Thank you for letting us know it's being recorded. I appreciate that. My name is Gregory Young. I am the program manager at the Clean Coalition. The Clean Coalition is a nonprofit, small nonprofit with the mission to accelerate the transition to renewable energy and a modern grid. And we do that through technical, policy, and project development expertise. We focus heavily on solar-driven microgrids and the feasibility around technical and economics of developing them. We've helped cities as well as counties, as well as even school districts and beyond understand at the beginning stages all the way through to RFP and development phases of what it takes and what they should expect in terms of technical and economics. And so we're very excited to hear what the resilience goals are for Guadalupe and see if there's a potential fit for us to assist in any type of solar microgrids, electrification, or even EV adoption that you guys are interested in, and see how we could assist.
Just out of curiosity, what's your territory, Greg?
Yeah, so we focus mainly in California. We have a small team. Portion of us live up in the Bay Area, while a portion of us live down here in the Southern California area. You can kind of, point to Santa Barbara as our territory, mostly just because our executive director is located there. So he's like the center mass. And so that's where I'm located as well. So I actually grew up in the county, grew up in Los Olivos, and then have moved all over, but live in Santa Barbara right now. And so myself and the executive director, Craig Lewis, work really closely together on all projects. So while we are remote, all of us are remote employees, there is no one location, but we do projects all across California from the Bay Area down to San Diego.
Super, thank you.
Yeah.
I did not get the name of the person from People's Self-Help Housing. I've got GC on the screen. Perhaps you could introduce yourself. Hopefully this works.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, again, it's still tinny.
Okay. My name is Maggie. I'm going to speak very loud and slow to make sure. My name is Maggie Allen, and I am the senior property manager for the apartment complexes here in Guadalupe, Guadalupe Court Apartments. Brand new housing for agriculture families. For people's housing, we do have also the Riverview apartments there at Cedar Street, Cedar Chavez. I do manage other properties, and they all, of course, are for low-income families. One of the reasons why I jumped into this was because I am new to Guadalupe. I did live in Santa Maria for a couple of years back in the 80s. But I'm really interested to know what I can offer to my residents, mainly to see what's, out there developing, what's new in the area, anything to help everybody out here in the community.
Super. I got most of that, but it was difficult. So what I would recommend, at least during this process, and I think it was Maggie, during this process, is if you have some comments to make, it might be good if you throw them into the chat so we can all see them, because it might work better that way. So let's try that as an idea. And for all of you, at the end of this meeting, you will always have an opportunity to send emails and give your comments offline as well by calling me, however you want to get that information to me after this meeting if you need to. Is it Zoe or Zoe?
It's Zoe.
Okay.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Zoe Carlson. I work for the county. I'm in the Planning and Development Department, specifically in the Long Range Planning Division. And one of my projects is going to be this coming year focusing on the environmental justice element for the county. And so I'm here today trying to get my ears out into the community, better understand the issues and opportunities and what folks are working on, to the extent that those may carry over into the environmental justice element project I'm working on. So thanks for letting me listen in today.
And just one other thing, every one of these meetings gets recorded and then put on our website. So I will put in a link in the chat directly to the resilience plan on our Los Amigos webpage, so you can look at it. So this will be on there, the evening meeting will be on there, and last week's meeting is already on there. So if you want to look at those prior meetings and make comments on them as well, you can do that as well. Last but not least, Lisa.
Hi, I'm just a resident of Guadalupe, and I was interested in what you guys have to say.
Okay. Thanks, Lisa. Okay, so let me start by sharing. Let me just make sure I have it. Yep. I'm going to share our data to date. This should be it. So for those that have been here before, you know what I'm about to say, but for those that haven't done this process before, we have had, the pandemic has slowed everything down, but we've been doing this for about 1.5 years. We have an ongoing leadership meeting that gives us information that we that we collect. We've had 3 or 4 stakeholder meetings in the past, a general community stakeholder meeting, a meeting that was conducted in Spanish as a stakeholder meeting, and we've gone to the schools, both 7th and 8th grade, doing stakeholder meetings with them as well. In each of those meetings, we've been collecting data on what people think is the important aspects of the community from a weakness and strength perspective, as well what we call assets and impediments. And so we've been collecting them, and this, just so you know, again, this sheet, except for this tab that we're working on today, is on the web in the page that we've discussed earlier, and you'll have a link to it. It is a mixture of data of what individual thinks that the assets of Guadalupe are and what are the impediments. And this is from the perspective of a community resilience plan. It's not necessarily from the perspective of what we call hazard mitigation. So this is not a focus on hazard mitigation kinds of resilience stuff. This is more a focus on the community itself and its resilience. So just for clarity, this is, so each of these, which you can't see because they're too small, are all of the tabs with the data. And again, this is online. So today, these are the assets and impediments. And what I've done is I've cut and pasted the things that I see as being related to today's subject, which is the built environment, transportation, and housing. And I've taken them from the prior meetings, what are considered assets and impediments, and I've put them here for us to look at today. There's 2 parts of today that we're trying to get to. The first one is looking at the assets and the impediments and what are similar and that we can take and put into the same. So if we have a subject matter that looks like it's being done twice, or it can be put together into a grouping, we want to do that first. And then we want to look at those subject matters and say, which of these assets and which of these impediments are the most important to a community resilience, to the city of Guadalupe, meaning these are the subject matters that we take forward and potentially start looking at what are the solutions to these particular subjects. So does that make sense to everybody? So starting, I think potentially we want to start with what is listed as assets. In some cases, you will see that people have listed a particular asset like City Hall as an asset, but they've also put City Hall on the impediment side because City Hall needs some improvements. So you can sometimes see them in both places, and there's reasons for that, and it makes sense for them to be in both places. Another example of this is the Royal Theatre, which is in the downtown Guadalupe area. It's an asset. It's a historical building, or it will be soon designated historical, but it's been closed down for nearly 20 years. So it's an impediment as well. So you can see them sometimes in both places, and that's perfectly okay. So starting with, let's start with the assets because they tend to be the easier ones to start with. Is there any of these assets that you think, actually, I should probably do this. Are there any of these assets that you see maybe that could be connected to each other?
I think 3 and 4 could probably be merged.
3 and 4.
Is that what you mean?
Yes, yes. So look at these numbers down here in 3 and 4.
Yeah, so under assets, we have a community desire and a desire for resilience. And it seems like in both those, it means a community desire for resilience.
Yeah, so let me look for these. Do you see what lines they're on?
It's line 3 and line 4. A3 and A4.
You have them different from me because I'm only in B, and it starts on 6. Do you see that? Am I in the right?
I do not know what to say because I think I'm looking at your screen, so I should be seeing the same.
Yes, yeah. You know what? Let me try something because sometimes the shared screen is different. So let me stop and try again.
Sorry about creating confusion there, everyone.
No.
Heather, I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah, okay. I think you're right. I think what we're doing is we might be looking at a different sheet. So let me make sure I've got the right one open.
Okay.
Yeah, here we go. Aha. Now that one's different, right, Heather?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm looking at this one. You were looking at something else. So anyway.
Okay.
So you still have things like small town community, that's in there. So, and there's another one that you see here is transportation. So in some situations, people have said transportation in Guadalupe is an asset. And then in other places, it's seen as an impediment that more is needed. So that does happen. The other thing that is you can also do is if you are not seeing an impediment / asset in this group, we can always add as well. So actually we've got transportation. Let me do this. We've got transportation twice. So we can delete that one and leave this one here.
We've also got accessible transportation.
Yeah, so I think we can leave that in there and leave both of them in there, right? We can just leave that. That's the subject matter is accessible transportation. The other thing that we can do is we can take certain subjects like, I'm going to save that one. We can take certain subjects like where it says small community. Anything that's similar to that could also be put into one subject. So small community and small town atmosphere we can put together.
That's also repeated on line C18.
Yeah.
Tom?
Yeah.
B11, B18, and B19 are all the same.
Actually, I think, yeah, actually, I think what we can do is affordable housing projects.
And then just list them.
People self-help housing and that can all go together, right?
Yep.
Put it up here.
We might want to spell this out. I didn't know what PSHH was.
Yeah.
And I'm familiar with the organization. I just wasn't familiar with the acronym.
Yeah, well, I'll make sure that we do put that out. But People Self-Help Housing is a nonprofit affordable housing developer. They have 2 projects in Guadalupe.
Okay.
And in the long run, it will be spelled out. It's just.
There's also meeting housing needs under B7.
Yeah. Good.
Bus service and railroad stop are both transit. Maybe say transit, comma, railroad, comma, bus.
There's the bus stop. So we've seen if there's one further up. This can, all of this you're saying basically goes into transportation.
Yes.
You think the railroad goes in there? I think so, right?
Yeah. It also has an economic development role, but I think here it's being talked about in terms of moving people.
Yeah. Why is that not? For some reason, it's not doing it. Okay. Anything else? I'm trying to see if there's anything else in here that goes together.
I don't know if you want to group your city facilities. Senior Center, City Hall, and Royal Theater are all city facilities.
True, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to make a similar comment. I don't know if you had mentioned before that some items are sort of themes and some are, specific buildings or locations. So,
yeah.
If we want to say architecture, Royal Theater, or, schools, football field, or, things like that, or sort of give the larger theme and then highlight the specific example. That's a general comment. Yeah.
I was going to suggest the same thing because some are places, some are services.
That's right.
So
in some cases, if you look on the impediment side, I have put things in there that are quote unquote services like dog park. The reason I put them in there is because putting in the dog park requires the park, which the city has, which is a built environment. So it's like adding to what is already the built environment. That's why I put it in there. But you're right, some things, the idea theoretically is that the built environment is needed as part of that particular subject. I could be wrong on that though. Senior Center is also city. Do people think that Shannon's approach, which I kind of agree with, but I'm curious, is when we do the built environment and we look at structures, that we should separate out things that are owned by the city versus other structures. Mainly because that gives, at the end of this, subject matters that are specific to the cities needing improvements potentially, or highlighting their assets and what they can do, versus some of the things that go into this resilience plan will not necessarily have anything to do with the city. It may be the nonprofits will be working on that subject matter because it focuses more on them. So it's the separation for me is that, but I'm curious what everybody else thinks. Greg, you were thinking maybe putting them together all?
Well, just under assets, when I see that term, I think something that's built, like a built asset, as opposed to something like a response or a service, emergency response, or a service, or even fast emergency response is kind of a subset of a service. So
I'm almost certain, actually, I'm almost agreeing with you that fast emergency services, the reason I put that in there, and this is just my logic, Greg, so it could be way off. The reason I put that in there is one of the values of Guadalupe is it is small enough that there's lots that can be done in a small space. So doing bike lanes is less expensive in Guadalupe because there's less roads, less places to need to do it. The reason there is a fast emergency response is primarily because it's not that far to get to places in Guadalupe. So that's part of why I put it in, which is kind of it's kind of a third or fourth degree logic to that. So I kind of put it in there, but it doesn't necessarily have to be there. It's there for that reason only.
Yeah. What about would like reliable as well factor in there?
Yes, very much so. Yeah, and my experience has been from the community is everything around emergency services, the police and the fire at least. This is the sense. It's reliable. It's fast. This is a quiet, low crime community. So the Dune Center, and this is where I'm separating them. So again, I'd like feedback on this. City Hall, Theater, and Senior Center are built environments that the city has. Same with parks. The Cultural Historical Center and the Dune Center and the medical clinics are all built environments, but operated and owned by private or nonprofit or entities. And so I'm separating them for that reason. But does that make sense to do it that way?
Yeah, if the purpose of this plan is to sort of take some action and for everyone to understand what their responsibilities are, it makes sense for, Shannon to have the list of city items and that sorts of things for the purpose of this.
But I mean, there's different ways you can look at it, at those assets, even under city, under the city facilities, right? Like if people are appreciating the cultural value that they offer, the recreational value, the community convening opportunities that they provide, or just the basic services. There's lots of different ways to look at how people see them as assets. But I don't think you have to separate them, but I think just appreciating that they're providing different values and benefits to different stakeholders is important.
Yeah.
Tom, the cemetery is not the city's.
Oh, that's right. It's a district, isn't it?
Correct.
Oh, apologies.
Please don't make me responsible for the cemetery.
All right, I've taken them out. But you get the parks.
Accepted.
You'll have to be careful when you're not looking. Maybe that list will get longer there, Shannon.
Yeah, that's why she's sitting in to make sure it doesn't get too long.
Yes.
I noticed that somebody just joined us. Would you be interested in introducing yourselves or just sit in?
Looks like they're still connecting, so we may have to ask that
Okay.
question again when it's.
Okay, I'll do that. Yep. Okay. Okay. Anything else that you see that should be added? Oh, this is another one. So there's been. Did I put one of the things that came? Oh, there it is. Yeah. So we have a grouping here that's basically an asset, which is we have, I believe, 3 regulatorily restricted affordable housing projects in Guadalupe, one by the Housing Authority of Santa Barbara, the other 2 by People Self-Help Housing. And it's an asset. In addition to that, we have recent growth, which is basically focusing on Pasadena, which is our market rate single family home development, which is this. So does that stand alone, or does it sit in this meeting, sit in with the other housing stuff?
Personally think you should put Pasadena with recent growth and have it
just thinking the
separate from
same thing.
affordable housing.
Yeah.
And keep the affordable housing separate, right? Was that your thoughts, Shannon? Keep them separate? Okay. I think that makes sense because it's a different sort of approach, even though I hear they're both affordable, Pasadena and. Okay. I'm just seeing if there were some people that joined. I want to know if you're interested in introducing yourselves. That would be super. If not, don't worry about it. Okay. So any other groupings on the asset side? Well, actually, there's that football field. That goes in with the parks.
You already put parks and football field there. You just didn't erase them.
Okay.
Now we've got 2 football fields, Tom.
No, we don't. Okay. Cemetery is separate. Schools, I think, are separate because they're a separate entity. And then we also need to remove parks from there too. Okay. I think that's the assets groupings. Is there any sense from a resilience perspective? And I've noticed that of the subjects, we have a lot on the built environment side, and we have housing addressed, and we do have some transportation. So is there anything on these lists that you think is that you would prioritize, that you think is important of this grouping?
When you say prioritize, you mean of highest need? Oh, these are assets.
So these are
the most
assets.
important asset?
Yeah, or think of it in terms of, let's say, for example, affordable housing. It's an asset. And so at least this group says it's an asset, and we put them together as an asset. So the question becomes, when you start looking at the resilience plan, you can say that these are assets that we want to continue to support and make sure that they are an integral part of the community, right? To ensure that assets continue. We could also say that asset is fabulous and we need more of them. We need additional affordable housing to ensure that we really do have enough affordable housing for the community that we have. And that still keeps it in there. it can also be seen as an answer to the particular impediment. So for example, and you'll find that when we get on the impediment side, there is a statement by some that we don't have enough affordable housing. And so you can sometimes say that the asset is we do have affordable housing. We have some great projects that exist that are well maintained, that are an asset to the community. And on the impediment side, we say, yes, there's a need for more housing, and we have 3 projects to show us how to do that. And on the impediment side, we may be saying that part of the solution to the lack of affordable housing or the need for more affordable housing is to work with the 2 affordable housing developers in Guadalupe to do more. So it can be done in that way, if that answers your question, Shannon.
It's hard because they're so diverse.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm going to put in my own plug to accessible transportation simply because I've got a ton of irons in the fire on improving that. And so, of course, I think it's important because there's lots we can do about it to improve it. So I'm going to give that one, high rating because I can do something about it, and we are.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that makes sense. Maybe what would help is for us to do what we just did with assets, to do it with impediments as well. So we have both pictures, and then we can go back and forth on prioritizing.
Sorry, I think that sounds great. I just wanted to comment on / support what Shannon was saying. I think, when we talk about transportation and housing, you can't really prioritize one over the other because they're so interconnected. And I think that the other items, the things that the community is very proud of, are not only connected, but it sort of creates the vision by which the community wants to grow or change, or, whatever happens in the community. So there's a feeling of appreciation of the small town feel of the place that should be taken into consideration when designing transportation and housing plans. So those sorts of things, and also just recognizing how, preservation of historic assets are, to some extent, the ability to attract people to come and visit them. And also, jobs and education, if, maybe someone would assume, I would not, but if we really want to create sort of a stronger economy, you can't, either you need to bring tons of jobs to Guadalupe, which I don't really see happening anytime soon, or you need to make other places accessible, and it can't mean everyone's driving everywhere. You can't commute by car to Lompoc or Santa Maria or wherever every day and allow Guadalupe to retain the character that it has today.
Yeah, and which all makes sense, because, and the other thing is if you look at the asset side of that, it doesn't have anything in there under alternative transportations, but they are on the impediment side. So those two can get connected in that you look at what are the needs and what's already there and moving them so that they cover both. We have had an economic development focus group, and the primary thing that came out of that is that Guadalupe needs to be a destination location, that we need to bring dollars in because we lose dollars going to Santa Maria. So some of those subjects that you brought up have actually already been part of the earlier process and make sense for the bigger picture, for sure. So let's see if we can't put some impediments together that are the same subject matter.
Okay, speaking of transportation, you've got traffic congestion at work time, walkability, mobility, and
Yeah,
limited
let's
transportation systems
let's
all
put,
go together.
yeah, let's do, we've got this traffic, which I can put up here with bikes. Let me do this. So we take that out. And then you said there was, oh, walkability here, right?
Mhm. And then there's a one that says limited transportation systems, which falls into that same one. It's at E13.
Ah, there we go. I can't see for looking.
We could also add F15, traffic streetlights.
Yeah, F15.
Yeah, got
And I guess an informational question, do we think people are commenting on lighting the street or adding traffic signals?
I've heard both.
it. Yeah, both. Yeah. It's a good point. I left it that way, but my understanding was it was street lights themselves that they were looking for. If you ever go into Guadalupe at nighttime, the street lights that are there are very, very dim.
Yeah.
And I think that's something of what they're discussing, they're talking about.
The sidewalks there, F14 could be added as well.
Yeah. The other thing to remember is some of these items go back to statements that were made sometimes a year and a half ago. So sometimes they're, for the most part, I think these are all still relevant, but there's been some that are not as relevant as they were in the past. Anyway, so I think
On
that
that
covers.
note, Tom, a lot of them are works in progress.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I see a couple. There's a, looks like skate park, dog parks, parks could all go under, I think it's F16, like lack of recreation facilities. It could just be public areas or public facilities.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see what we can do. We can take parks. Yeah, we can put it in here. The pool, I think we can put in here that, oh, this has pool already, just misspelt. So that can go. Skate park as well. That's not in there, is it? Nope. I'm thinking that's all of the recreation park built environment stuff. The theater, I was going to say, I think I would take the theater out of here and put it into this one because these are all, well, maybe not. These seem to me like these are all city, but
I do it differently.
maybe not.
F18 and E15 need to be blended.
Eighteen and
F18 and
oh, and 15, yeah.
and probably just get rid of F18.
Yeah, because it pretty much says it, doesn't it?
And I don't know if you saw the chat, Tom, F8 and F17.
F8. Yeah.
Thanks, Gregory.
Yeah, so I'm going to take this one and put it up here. The shelter actually relates to two things. It also relates to a dog shelter. So I'm trying to think if we would put those two together. I want to make sure we're clear for homeless. These two are the same, really. Empty buildings and unused vacant buildings. This is the same. I'm just going to put it in here.
I had a just kind of maybe general question. Maybe I'm not understanding it fully. Would it make any sense to line up assets with their impediments? I know some of them do, some of them don't, but I mean, if we're speaking about, city-owned buildings, or, emergency response facilities that can tend to be aligned with their impediment that they are, vulnerable to natural disasters, earthquakes, high sea rise in terms of losing, utilities such as electricity. So, I'm just trying to draw parallels between the two. It looks like this large yellow bar is a big divider. So it leads me to believe that they are not meant to be aligned together along the same row. But if it makes sense.
No, it's just, they can be aligned. That's not a problem per se. The yellow line just is there because when we sat down with everybody that we've done this up to now, is we said, tell me what you think is a strength of Guadalupe. And then tell me what you think is a weakness of Guadalupe, assets and impediments. And so you do find that there is this crossover between the two. You can have, let me think, you can have that we have parks and they're good parks, but you can also have the parks need to be improved. There needs to be a dog park, there needs to be a skate park. So they can cross over. If you see them in both, in my opinion, that gives you an indicator that it is important to the community because you're getting it ticked in both places. There has been, so I'll ask this question because I've got people in the room that would join in on that subject, and that is the vulnerability of Guadalupe in relationship to, again, sea rise, electricity shutoffs, that sort of thing. Where do people feel like that comes into concerns in the built environment? Let's use that as an example. So we know that Guadalupe is in a zone 4 for earthquakes. But we also know that Guadalupe has, I think, only, Shannon, you can remind me on this one, but I believe we only have 2 or 3 buildings remaining in Guadalupe that have not been earthquake retrofitted.
I'm not going to bore the group with a bunch of details, but I don't know how many buildings still need to be retrofitted, but I will tell you that I sat in on a state earthquake meeting, webinar. And one of the things that was really weird was, although we are surrounded by extremely high earthquake probabilities, for some reason, the city of Guadalupe is in this weird, we're still a zone 4, but we're in this weird void. we have not had a major earthquake like all of our surrounding areas. So yes, earthquakes are something we need to take seriously, but we're not like, you know, a lot of places like Loma Prieta, Northridge that have had just, and even Santa Barbara that have had, you know, huge earthquakes. So we keep it on the list. We, you know, we keep it in mind, but it's, you know, when I list the likely things that are going to get us, earthquake isn't at the top of the list. Likewise, you know, the power shutoffs were, you know, huge in the news, and there are a lot of other areas that experience power shutoffs. We're again in this really weird place that, you know, we're not as susceptible to those power shutoffs like a lot of other areas. So, you know, again, it's a little bit lower on the list than some people might think, just based on what they hear on the news, or, you know, just by happenstance. So it's, you know, that whole relative risk thing. Our relative risk of earthquakes and power shutoffs are quite lower than a lot of other places in California.
I think Santa Maria is in that same vortex. Nothing ever seems to happen.
Yeah, and it's really strange. And, you know, until you really dive into it, you have, you know, no reason to believe that we're any different from anybody else. But it is strange. And when I went to go try to obtain, you know, a grant for emergency diesel generators, we didn't win the grant. Why? Because we're not, you know, we're not in that section of people who are really susceptible to it. So, you know, I count my blessings that those aren't things that we really have huge risks on. We are 4 miles from the ocean, and, you know, quite a bit up in elevation. You know, we're not at seashore. We're not like Pismo that's going to fall into the ocean because, you know, it's eroding away. So we don't have nearly the sea level rise concern that a lot of other people have. We sit on an enormous groundwater basin that is quite healthy and got us through multiple years of drought. So we don't have nearly the drought risk that a lot of other places have. I mean, we're quite blessed. You know, we're kind of the charmed little city here in terms of, you know, the natural risks that a lot of other people are plagued with.
And the last one I would add to that is the floodplain. Guadalupe, at least on a 100-year floodplain, is out for the most part.
We do have an area of small risk, you know, right there on Lower Pioneer, and, you know, the wastewater treatment plant is not outside of risk. But even then, as far as our flooding goes, you know, we're not, you know, adjacent to the Russian River, you know, that's susceptible to huge flooding.
Yeah.
So, you know, yes, we do need to take into account those, and yes, we need to make sure that we plan for them, but they are not enormous risks that are going to put our entire population at risk.
It's really interesting. Shannon, really quickly, I know that there are some funds made available specifically from Self-Generation Incentive Program, the SCHIP funds, that can go towards the cost of energy storage for communities within low-income district areas, and that are also city-owned buildings, facilities. So I know you mentioned that you had applied or looked into diesel generators. If you're looking to for alternative alternative solutions that, you know, are more green, you know, Clean Coalition specifies in that and helps within that. So we'd be more than happy to help and maybe discuss.
That. Now there's definitely going to be, so we are already part of 3CE. So that means that our power generation is being provided by green, because that's 3CE's mission. So from that standpoint, it's no longer coal power, you know, that's being supplied to us. When I look at our opportunities for really making a difference as far as electrical use, we have so much low-hanging fruit when it comes to reducing our electrical load that, you know, the conversation is, do you create it or do you save it? And we've still got so many opportunities for saving first. I'm sitting in a 1930s building who's got single pane windows and, you know, obsolete gas registers under the building. I mean, this building alone, we could cut down our electrical use hugely. simply in addressing our, efficiency standards. Could we use things like microgrids? Yeah, we probably could. But until we start hacking it back at how much we're wasting, that's probably the first place that I would put our money. And that's harder to do when nobody wants to touch this beautiful 1930s building. Because as soon as I touch those windows, that the whole building's gonna fall apart.
Probably so.
So those are some of the challenges I face. And when it's listed as an impediment, City Hall needs upgrades. Did I put that one on, Tom? I might have put that one on. but we've got some huge challenges when it comes to this building, not just from from the ADA standpoint, from an electrical efficiency standpoint, from a just usability standpoint. It's truly an impediment, and how to really start hacking away at that is going to be an interesting challenge. So Gregory, if you've got some ideas on more, how do we start working on electrical efficiency before we start going into, saving?
So, Greg, if you could leave your contact information in the chat field, that'll be helpful.
Yeah, I'd happy to do that. Yeah, and
I have a project that we're doing is Leroy Park and Community Center, and Shannon knows I want that to be a microgrid if I could ever get it to be one. So we can have a conversation about that project.
And I'm not opposed to those projects, but I do know that energy efficiency is going to be our bigger bang for the buck.
Of course, yeah, and it's those projects like that can often be tied in as well together to create a very comprehensive package to address multiple issues at once. Kind of bundling them. So yeah, I'd be happy to I'll reach out via email because I believe in actually, yeah, I'll just drop my email here and we can continue the conversation.
That would be great.
Yeah, since there was no calendar invite and included each other's emails, so yeah, I'll go ahead and do that.
And Heather, if you could do the same, I'd appreciate your contact information in here too. I think I have everybody else's contact information. Garrett, did you have anything to add to this?
Just one more thing, Shannon, I wanted to make sure that you're aware of CC LEAP, or Central Coast Leaders in Energy Action Planning, I think it's called.
I was not.
Okay, I will make sure to connect you. So there's the Energy Coalition, not to be confused with the Clean Coalition. The Energy Coalition is a nonprofit based down in Southern California, and they have utility funds from PG&E to offer public agencies and organizations free technical assistance, primarily focused on energy efficiency. So you can get audits, and you can identify projects and cost benefit analysis, and then they can help you with procurement and implementation, and potentially also obtaining financing for your project. So low or no cash projects.
That's good to know. Thanks.
Sorry, I just had to do something which took me out of the spreadsheet. There we go. So your City Hall upgrade is in there, Shannon.
Oh, yes, I see it.
Garrett, just clarity, did you have anything to add to the whole conversation around climate change, sea rise? I know, for example, there was a study done on sea rise along the Santa Barbara coast, and I'm pretty certain I remember it saying that with the Guadalupe dunes, there's less of a risk to Guadalupe, except for the potential of seawater going into the Santa Maria River.
I can't speak to that specifically since I'm not very familiar with the geography and the subterranean dynamics that are going on there. But the climate change vulnerability assessment was recently, it's mostly completed, and I could share a map with some of the layers that help to kind of bring in the different assets and the people and the climate hazards. And you can kind of make your, deduce from there, what you feel like is an appropriate climate hazard. But hearing from Shannon, I think a lot of the major ones are not immediate, but I guess the other ones I can think of are extreme weather, and what people do when it gets really hot, if they have air conditioning or someplace to go during those times.
Yeah, I think there is a definite need for consideration of a cooling station in Guadalupe.
So one of the things I can answer to, as far as seawater intrusion, there's a hydrogeological report that is done on the Santa Maria groundwater basin that's done by the Coastal Management Authority every year. And it has a net output to the ocean of about 40,000 acre feet per year of water. So there's a net water moving out of our basin and not moving in, meaning that that's very protective right now. And of course, that's kept an eye on a yearly basis. So, Tom, I'm not sure if you're keeping an eye on the chat, but I think it was Heather brought up a question about whether or not infill is an asset or an impediment. And I can speak a little bit to that if you wish.
Sure, please.
Okay, I do believe that Guadalupe has a huge opportunity for infill. Typically, there are other agencies. I was with an agency earlier that infill was going to be a huge problem because the water and sewer lines were constructed in such a way that the infill would overwhelm them. But the way the city's water and wastewater infrastructure is constructed, we can actually have infill here in the community and it not be an impediment. The only impediment that I see at this time for infill is the fact you only have 3 two-lane highways coming in and out of this community that are already impacted, especially at commute hours and ag hours. So I think that that's our biggest impediment to infill or population growth in general is getting in and out of the community. But otherwise, from other infrastructure standpoint, Guadalupe stands in a really good place as far as being able to accommodate infrastructure or infill.
Would you, just going along with that, under this subject matter of transportation, more bikes, would you put that difficulty getting in and out of Guadalupe as part of that, in that grouping?
I would. When you talk about a disaster, one of the things about disasters is, can you get out? And I think it's common amongst just about every community on the Central Coast that there are very limited ways to get in and out. I mean, you can't go west without a boat. Most places can't go east too easily. It's north-south, and it's just going to be crazy. So, yeah, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. There's nothing from the transportation, which is SBCAG organization, to expand any one of those 3. So getting the cars off the road, encouraging CalVans and encouraging transit are really the way to go. And that's when working with the Housing Authority on trying to get those services expanded.
Yeah, I think the other comment I was thinking of, and then I have another one unrelated, was just, some of these hazards that might not be direct impacts for the city. There could be some cascading impacts if they're, within the region and they're affecting mobility or access or energy, let's say, or access to food and goods and things like that, and services that are typically, along these major arteries. The other thing I wanted to share, this is a bit of a preview. So Shannon, if you recall, we're working to build or construct a greenhouse gas inventory report for you. And so that report is mostly done, or the product is mostly done, and we'll eventually schedule a time for you to look at it and and talk with you about the information, but it could be an input into this process for the community to understand sources of greenhouse gas emissions, both from the built environment and from transportation.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that will, is there anything you can share with me on even draft? And I ask that because I'm currently, like today, putting in a grant application and anything I have on reduction of greenhouse gases, because I'm asking for money from the National Rural Transit Assistance Program for improvements to bus stops. And I just got 2 grants for stimulus funds for improvements in our transit. There's going to be huge changes in transit in the upcoming year. And anything I can get that speaks to that would be great. So even if you can send it to me draft, that would be helpful.
Sure.
It sounds almost like, Garrett, that this is something that we could put as an appendices to this planning report as well, so that it's in multiple places. So I'd be interested in that product as well and looking at it. Shannon, this isn't the one you need a letter for, is it?
Yeah, it's due on Monday.
We need to
I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
you need me to draft it for you, I will, but yeah.
If you could.
End of day Monday.
If you can draft it, I'll sign it.
Okay, I'll try to get it to you this afternoon. If I get it to you this afternoon, will you turn around to me tomorrow?
I'll give it to you this afternoon.
You're the best. Thank you.
Okay, so there was something, so I put lack of tourist development. The reason I pulled that over is it's actually related to the built environment, because we, as a community that wants to be a destination location, one of the big built environments that's missing is hotels. So that's why that's in there, for that particular reason. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else that goes in that section. I'm going to take earthquakes off of that because we've had that conversation. And at this point, do we leave it in or take it out?
You know, I'll defer to the group, but I do believe that, you know, natural disasters in general, not necessarily earthquakes by itself, but like Garrett said, you know, extreme heat and, you know, just an acknowledgement that, yeah, California is susceptible. And just because our risks are relatively lower doesn't mean that they go away completely. And that we should remember that California loves extremes.
I'm going to put in here that, if this makes sense, anybody want to add to this, but I'm going to put in here some buildings are still not earthquake retrofitted, and that should stay there until every building. And I do think, Shannon, there's maybe 2 or 3 left, with the theater being one.
Okay. Yeah, I just don't know.
Yeah. Heat extremes. And
just general weather extremes.
Oh, I keep spelling weather wrong. Sorry. I keep doing weather instead of weather.
Garrett, do you think that's inclusive enough?
I like the cascading issue as well.
I mean, you've experienced the weather there, so you have to say if that feels inclusive enough.
I think Guadalupe could probably raise about 10 points on the heat stream, and they'd still be cold.
Yeah, I just like it's always cold here. We are moderated by, we're certainly moderated by the ocean. There's no doubt about that. I think there are 2 days out of the year that I actually take my jacket off when I'm outside.
Yep, I think that's probably about true. I'll keep them on here because we still have to go through these and say, you know, what is our priority. This is the other reason why TOT was come on here, because it relates to tourism, lack of physical buildings to support tourism. But I think I'll just throw it in there, even though it's not quite belonging in this subject matter. But I don't want to necessarily take it out either. No major grocery stores Does this go under the built environment, the fact that we don't have a major grocery store or anything else related to food, that it is a food desert? No community garden, no community orchard?
I personally think we should keep it here.
Okay.
There are things we can build. There are things that can be done. If you have housing, then I think that one's a good one to leave.
Okay, all right. So we do have lack of affordable housing. Bring back the theater. I think we have that on here as the theater somewhere on here. Okay.
Yeah, it's on
So we
F13. It's a theater.
Oh yeah, there it is. Let's just push this up into here so we have it in the same place. We do have a lack of affordable housing, and the truth of the matter is, when you're dealing with affordable housing in California, you never have enough affordable housing. So I think it's always going to be there on the impediment side, just because you're always going to find that you don't have enough. So I would say leave that on there. I think this is already on here, right? Lack of recreational facilities, or is that the same? No, I think that's the one we put. I'm just going to move it up into here so it's in the same area and save you guys getting dizzy. I think that gets. I'm not sure about this one.
I think that one's in mobility and transit.
Do you think it should be just deleted or put up there?
I personally think it should be deleted, but that's just my interpretation of it.
Anybody else have any concerns on that one? I think deleted makes sense too, just because the transportation one above is pretty clear that what the subject matter is. Okay. So looking from the impediment perspective, what's our priorities on here? If you were to pick three.
I think the biggest impediment is our empty buildings. You know, I can do a lot of things about mobility. I can get people around. I can improve infrastructure. I can, you know, do stuff with city facilities. But when people come into the town, if what we're trying to do is tourism, I look around and I see it looks dilapidated. It looks abandoned. But that's just my perspective. It's going to be hard to do a lot of other things if our town still looks dead.
Okay. That's what you would put as first. Let me anybody else put something first?
The other thought is that if we filled the buildings, that it would be more sales tax.
Yeah.
It would give us more to be able to work with things like providing more services, that sort of thing. If the buildings were filled, more people would move in, and more people moved in, we'd have more reason why we have a grocery store. We can solve a lot of these if we could just get our buildings filled.
Exactly. Anybody have anything else that they would put first? Is this not the same?
Highlighted the wrong one. I wanted F13 highlighted.
I wonder if F13 and E9 are not basically the same thing. At least the look sad and abandoned is the same, right?
Yeah.
And the need for hotels. let's put them both in red to say they are the same, and then I can look at it a little bit more in detail. Anybody want to put something in? So let's assume that because I'm not hearing anybody disagreeing with this as being first, what would you put second?
I don't want to drive the conversation,
No, sorry.
but if nobody else has anything to add, I would add the transit one.
Anybody disagree?
I'm not a local.
Garrett, we need your opinion. Doesn't matter where you're from. I'm not a local either.
Well, from the climate change and mitigation
Yeah.
perspective, transportation is a priority area.
Okay. Is that your screaming background? Okay. Okay, so we see the condition of buildings as being a priority number one, and then we have all of the transportation needs in Guadalupe as being number two. Is there anything else that raises to the level of need in this groupings?
I wouldn't say they aren't needed. I will say though, if we solve those two, it works us towards solving the rest of them.
Yeah, the cascading kind of
Mhm.
domino express. Yeah. Anything else that anybody thoughts about this? We're down to the last 10 minutes, because I never like to go over on these. If we say it's an hour and a half, it's an hour and a half. So is there anything other than that that we see as maybe a third priority, or is these two basically getting us to where we think about this as something that is a 10 to 20 year community resilience plan with priorities listing, these are the things we should be doing over the next 20 years, and here are how we do those things. Well, the only thing I would add is housing. Just because I think anytime you have a community that's on the central coast of California, affordability and housing, is a critical thing.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Shannon, would you mind giving us an update on where the general plan update is? And Tom, could you speak to how these two might interrelate?
Okay, the general plan is being done by the planning department, but I have recently reviewed the circulation element and the environmental justice elements, which are in draft form right now. And I know I've given a lot of input as far as the city, like water and wastewater and solid waste, information in order to round out the development of the general plan update. But as far as when it will be done, I do not know. I'm sorry.
So in my case, the idea is to ensure that while these are going on concurrently, that one doesn't contradict the other. So there is a sense that that they want to see what we're doing and we want to see what they're doing to make sure we're all on the same page and that we can inform each other. At this point, they, and this is partly, again, about the pandemic. So how much can you actually do in person? And so at this point, there hasn't been a lot of communication, but I am connected to the people doing the general plan. And Larry, who's our planner in the city, has connected me, and he kind of plays the go-between. When he has a question of what we're doing, we do the go-between. But at this point, we haven't sat down and actually looked at each other's documents and come to that part. I would hope somewhere in the future, before we finalize, that they will be a part of my process of, here is the draft. How do you guys feel that this draft supports the general plan, and how much do we need to add to our report that helps whatever is going on with the general plan? So the idea is to coordinate, but it's not been great at this point.
Yeah, because it seems like a lot of these issues are things that should be addressed in the general plan. It would be great to codify, but there's a lot that could be more programmatic, that may not, go into the GP, and that would perhaps be better served in this resilience effort.
Yeah, I think so too. I think there was a general plan update process that was done a few years back by Cal Poly. So this general plan update, because the Cal Poly one never got finalized, there are some things that were done in the Cal Poly that this general plan people are looking at and then updating, and then the elements that were not done, they're doing. So it shouldn't take its normal time frame. They're kind of jumping in partway through. So I'm not sure how far along they are, and I'm not sure how problematic the pandemic is in finishing a plan like this. But I do know that they joined in to kind of carry forward what had already been partially done anyway. I have not heard an actual timeline or seen an actual timeline. Have you, Shannon? No. Okay. We are 4 minutes left, so I think we're pretty much done, unless there's anybody has any other pieces they would like to add, delete.
May I ask an unrelated question of Garrett? I clicked on your climate change vulnerability assessment map, but I don't see a legend. I see 3 colors, a dark blue, a lightish blue, and a tan.
If you go to the top right, you'll see the layers icon. And then you can toggle on a whole bunch of different things, and there's a little explanation there.
Oh, now I see.
Yeah,
okay.
And then also
error.
It's complicated. It's a lot going on here. And then also, if you are looking at the information button on the left side, you'll see a more detailed definition and source of information for all those layers.
Great. What a great resource. Thanks for sending. I'll be bookmarking this.
Yeah, I've got it open too. Super.
Thank you.
It looks like you might be doing it by census tract.
Yeah, a lot of the information, particularly the population-based information, is by census tract.
Okay.
But I think there's also layers in there that are from the Cal EnviroScreen 3.0. So I don't know if they're cutting it up any differently, but that's as best as they can do.
Yeah. And do you know how far along they are on EnviroScreen 4?
I know that there's a draft version out for public comment. I don't know what the process is for finalizing.
Okay. I hear that Guadalupe does better on we get back to where we were in EnviroScreen 2. Which is not great, is it?
Yeah.
No,
right.
I was going to say better. Really?
Well, better from the sense of funding availability.
And kind of along those lines, I want to extend the offer. We are very keen on partnering at any point in time and working on grants for projects that would serve the community. So this is a great process to go through to start identifying some priority areas, because we'll keep our eyes open for things that we feel like might be a good fit. But if there are things in particular that you really want to drive on, please feel free to reach out to us if there's a good sustainability nexus.
Would you be interested in helping support a project that improves transit?
Potentially.
I've got a grant I'm trying to get in that will help us. It's due on Monday, though. If I draft you a letter and send it your way.
I heard you asking Tom about that. Send it over.
Tom has already promised me a letter, but because I need a letter of authority from my governing board, which I have. I need a letter of partnership, which I'll get from Tom, but I also can include 4 letters of just general support. It's a national grant. There are 15 nationwide, but I got a fairly good shot on this one. I'm very excited about it. So
it's basically connecting the food desert issue in Guadalupe with the transportation.
Right.
Yeah, and in 3 words, well, 5, 10 words. We're going to put large fiberglass statues of our locally produced vegetables at each one of our stops to identify them by individual unique vegetables and include recipes for those to encourage people for healthy eating.
Sounds great.
It's got tourism, it's got healthy eating, it's got transit. It's got the support of my city council. So
great.
I'll give it a shot. So if I send you some draft language, if you would be interested, so if I can get something back before Monday, I'd be great.
We'll take a look.
Oh, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, everyone. It is 12:31. I appreciate everybody's.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Well.